Chris, you're going to hang out with me on this one, right?
Totally.
Okay, cool. Because I need the commentary. This is we've done one webcast with Active Countermeasures crew, going through and setting up the VM and kind of walking about the community edition. And we're going to do another one now about how you can set it up at home. Burke Tanner is like, it's 7.7 gigabytes. It is because it is a full VM with lots and lots and lots of enterprise level goodies on it. And Chris, do you kind of want to talk about why the team, like, why did we decide to release a community edition? What was kind of our impetus for doing?
Yeah. So just real quick first, if the 7 gigs is too big, the 2 gig one is an install script. You supply your own OS and it'll kind of go at it from there. But yeah, the whole idea behind this was give some people something that can help them in an emergency. You know, the concept is you think one of your home systems are whacked, or you think something at the office is whacked. It isn't helpful to like call a vendor and find out, well, there's a 6-week PO process and, and it'll cost you, your firstborn male child and $200,000 to get the software. And we wanted to release something that, grab it, deploy it. There's 2 different VM versions. There's a script install version. Get this going, get yourself out of trouble as quickly as possible.
So yeah, this is the installer and it tells you specifically what versions are supported. I think that's really important, Chris, because we have people that are downloading like, they'll do Fedora, right? Or Slack or something. Yeah. And they're like, oh, I'll pull it down. And it's no. It works specifically with Ubuntu 18.04, 20.04, long-term support, CentOS, Red Hat, and they're fully supported. So yeah, you don't have to download the 7 gig. You can just do the install script. For it. Now,
and the install script has options that, quite honestly, we didn't put in the VM because we didn't want to make the VM too big. So you can get SB, you can get Beaker. So if you want to run one of those tools at the same time, the install script will take care of that for you.
Here, I want to talk about those really, really quick. First, let's talk about what Beaker is, and this is included with it as well. And it's basically correlating, if you're running like an elk stack, it's correlating what you see in your network threat hunting data with sysmon logs as well. So this is really, really, really cool. And the other one, Chris, I'm going to queue this one up and let you talk about SB, because I love this one too. There's some more cool stuff. If I can get to it, there we go. Go.
So SB is for, hey, I've got users at home. How do I collect telemetry off of those systems? And you can get things like, what network apps are running, but we'll actually take that data, we'll process it, and we'll go through and identify are there any beacons originating from that system, any long connections, things of that nature.
Yep. And once again, kind of the impetus for why we decided to come up with the full community edition, well, there's really a number of reasons, right? One, Chris had already mentioned, just making it easier for people to try out the product and use it. But we also have a lot of nonprofits. Chris has some nonprofits that are very near and dear to his heart, like the YMCA. I have nonprofits that are very near and dear to my heart as well. And we talked about National Guard. We got an election coming up. So how do you actually go about setting this up and getting it to people and getting it in the hands of the people that need it the most? But as Chris said, without going through some kind of weird tiered purchasing process and vetting. And it's just trying to get it out there. And there are some limitations, and I'll talk about that here in just a little bit. Major construction said, isn't Ubuntu 18.04 at end of life? It is, but that is also the reason why the install script works on 20.04 as well.
Yep.
We have the 18.04 because there are still a lot of Ubuntu distributions that are out there, maybe plugged into span ports and tap ports and those things as well.
Almost as many as there are Windows 7.
Windows 7 is gone, right? There's no one on Windows 7.
Well, it depends which enterprise you walk into, but
yeah, almost all of them overseas and many DoD. Yeah. All right, so now you should be able to see the GitHub page that I have up right now. Can all of you say that you can see this or not? It's basically a GitHub page that has all of my labs that I do for my Pay What You Can classes. By the way, I do have a Pay What You Can Intro to Security class coming up in, I think it's the 18th. of September. It's coming up. Chris, do you have any pay what you can network threat hunting classes coming up here soon?
Let's see.
I just dropped you on the spot.
Yeah, really. We just did the advanced one. We have
Will
the pay what you can, or free threat hunting class coming up on October 3rd. So it's right before Wild West Hacking Fest. And then I think
Nice.
we'll be running that again in December.
Do we have a limitation on seats on that one? Because I thought we had to limit it a little bit because it was getting a bit unwieldy.
Yeah, it's like 100.
Okay.
So
yeah, just insane. So the lab that I'm going to do is now added in, and yes, this is a public page that all of you can get to. Just letting you, Fat Man will just say, shared out a link with the training event that is coming up on the 18th of September. So you can click that link. And oh, no. Did we just crash GitHub again? Chris, I don't know if you knew this, but I think we crashed GitHub during a webcast.
Awesome.
I had everybody do a lab with me that involved them downloading a whole bunch of like PCAP files and log files, and GitHub became non-responsive in the middle of it. So it was kind of crazy.
Oops.
All right. And Mario G said, I actually have a friend who runs a nonprofit and has asked me to assess his network and endpoint security. Yes, this is exactly that.
Yep.
So we're going to show you how to set this up in a real super easy way. We do have instructions on the website on how to set it up in an enterprise manner. And those are absolutely, if you want remote Zeek sensors, you're going to want to follow those instructions. But if you want to set it up at home, or you want to set it up just in a quick environment, small flat network, these are the instructions that you would want to follow. And let me put this link in for everybody in Discord. By the way, I kind of took the summer off, Chris, teaching. It feels really good to be presenting and teaching again. So this is kind of fun.
Yeah, I'm the same way, dude. I like go through withdrawals.
Yeah, it's been a long time. All right. So do I feel really bad about crashing GitLab or GitHub? No, not at all. So, all right. So if you want to download it, you can. The community edition download is right there. And the first thing that I do, I'm just going to be inside of VMware for just a little bit. So let me share out my virtual machine. And I kind of cheated a little bit. Let me scroll down. One of the first things I do is I kind of change up the install a little bit, and I set the virtual machine up to bridge networking. And what we're going to be doing here is we are going to be doing ARP cache poisoning on a local network, not for the purposes of evil, but for the purposes of network monitoring. This is something that I kind of like blew my mind when I first saw it. This company out there called Firewalla is amazing. And they have these little devices that you can get that are just really super small. There's a Firewalla purple. They have Firewalla blue and gold, and they're amazing. And the way that they work is I have the Firewalla blue plus. And if you notice, this little guy has one Ethernet port. That's it. I don't know if they have any pictures of the said Ethernet port right here. It has one Ethernet port. And yet this particular device does full network traffic, like regulation. I can do all kinds of lists, like stop my kids from playing games. I can regulate social media. I can filter out porn and all of those different things, all with a little tiny itsy bitsy device, Firewalla blue. And I was super interested in how in the hell was it able to get all the traffic to go through that little Firewalla blue with one Ethernet port. And what it does is ARP cache poisoning. Now, ARP cache poisoning, anytime your system is trying to find a system on a local network, it'll send out an ARP request and it'll be broadcast to every single system on that network. And then the system will respond back with its IP address and MAC address. And then that's how systems find each other in a very simplified way at layer 2. What's interesting, though, is you can send unsolicited, unrequested ARP responses where you can pretend to be the gateway. And in becoming the gateway, i.e. your router, so if you look here in this picture, the Firewalla is telling every device that it is this white router in the background, right over here. So it's basically saying that this IP address of the router, 192.168.22.1, is at the MAC address of the Firewalla. And then every device, whenever they try to go to the internet, they will put in the IP address. If you look at the TCP IP header, you'll have the IP address or where it's going out on the internet, but the actual MAC address at layer 2 will be the router. And then it'll basically do network address translation and then forward it on. But Firewall inserts itself in the middle of that communication. So all of the traffic on the network through ARP cache poisoning is now going through the Firewall and it's going outbound. And what you get as a consumer, I'll show you here, is I get full network traffic statistics of what's happening on my network. I also can see all the DNS entries and everything that's going on my network. And I can see data usage, which devices are using the most data, because Firewall has inserted itself in the middle of my network. Now, we're not talking about buying a firewall, even though I think that they're wicked cool. We're not selling firewalls. We're talking about how they're using ARP cache poisoning for the purposes of trying to improve home security. And it works really, really well. Then people were talking about what are the bandwidth issues associated with it. I have no problems with bandwidth usage with my firewall, like hardly ever. I've got a gigabit link at my house and the firewall keeps up with it. And as Bill has just pointed out accurately, in many, many, many networks, don't worry about, a home network when your external network leaving your house is like a 10 megabit or 100 megabit. That's going to be the limiting factor far before your internal networks as well. Beefy enough to handle how many devices, 10, 50, or 100? I would say in my house, I'm probably sitting, I can tell you right here, because the firewall tells me exactly how many devices I have. I have 47 devices on my network right now that it's actually going through. Now, this is set up for home usage. So, Chris, did I get the ARP cache poisoning stuff right? Is there anything else that you want to add on that? Because I learned it from you, man. I learned it from you. Because he had the first lab I ever took where he showed me ARP cache poisoning in 2003 and melted my mind. And I'm like, surely they're going to fix this in the next 20 years.
Yeah, so I noticed Cyberdiver's talking about the Xfinity modems. And it's funny because you and I were talking about that yesterday. Yeah, they are a little bit problematic. What you'll find is that if you plug into the Ethernet port on the Xfinity router and you run ARP cache poisoning, you can poison anything else that's also directly wired in. It tries to grab stuff off of wireless and usually breaks their it'll work for about a minute or two, and then it seems to break their connectivity. So I'm not really sure what Xfinity is doing within their device. The best way to get around that is throw in a managed switch, monitor off of that, and then move everything inside of the switch and don't plug directly into the Xfinity device except to go out and get internet access.
Yeah, I don't
give you better visibility on everything.
I don't know very many people in this industry that run their entire home network on the router that comes with their service. Yeah, that seems dirty to me. Like, is that dirty? And somebody was talking about 47 IP addresses. Those are rookie numbers. I have other networks.
Yeah.
And as far as my firewall is concerned, they're NATed networks. So as far as it's concerned, that would be a device, and there's multiple devices behind that. So I have more than 47. Now I feel weak and insignificant because I don't have enough IP addresses at home. That's weird.
Yes, when your home network needs to be laid out as a Class B,
then you might have a problem, or not. Actually, whatever. So, all right. So now I'm going to show you what the VM looks like when you first get started. This is it right here. I already set my password on the instructions. I make it very clear, and Bill makes it clear in his instructions. When you first log into this virtual machine, it's going to give you the password in the login banner. It's a long password, and Bill is very, very, very clear that it will show you this password exactly once. You need to take a picture of this password, because as soon as you log in, you want to change that password. And if you don't take a picture of that password after you log in, it's gone, folks. So you want to take a picture of that password because you're going to change it. And I've already done that because the password's long and no one wants to see me just sitting and typing in a password. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to set up this AC Hunter virtual machine to do something similar to what the firewall is doing, but we're going to do it in a way that gives you much better telemetry as far as what's happening on your network with Zeek logs and AC Hunter, using the same concept as a firewall, using ARP cache poisoning, but doing it all on the download of the AC Hunter system. So I have the system up. My IP address is 192.168.3.122. So I'm going to open up my Windows terminal. Let me go ahead and share that real quick.
Yeah, and just if John, if
Go
I
ahead.
can kind of give
Oh, please, while I'm
context
doing
on
this,
that.
perfect time. Yeah, perfect
Yeah.
time.
So Firewaller would get, so like, let's say one of your internal systems gets owned and it's calling out on a command and control channel. Firewaller will give you the network statistics of that traffic. Whereas what John's going to talk you through is actually going to tell you, hey, your internal system is talking to this IP address in, you know, Guangzhou, China. And that might be something you might want to go in and pay attention to. So
Exactly.
that's really the biggest difference. Plus, with what John's doing, you've got the fidelity of the Zeek logs. And if you haven't played around with Zeek, you absolutely positively need to. It was kind of interesting. We were doing stats on the CTF, and I
Yep.
noticed that people did better at answering threat hunting procedure questions than network traffic analysis questions. So I think that's something that we may, you know, come out with some additional content on.
Well, and we love creating little mini CTFs. And I think AC Active Countermeasures team has done like 9 of them.
Yeah,
So like little flash CTFs. So they're a lot of fun. So I hate, Chris, working within VMware at the command line inside of VMware. It's just ugly.
Yep.
So like one of the first things I like to do is just SSH into it.
Oh, absolutely.
So I can work and I can work within the confines of it. And I'm going to set up 2 separate terminals in Windows Terminal where I'm going to log in twice. And I'm going to have one that I'm set up as root and one that I am set up as just the data import account. And the data import account is the default one. Yeah, Chris, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if folks are looking for a good graphical tool on the Windows side, Smart TTY is freaking awesome. It's just real easy to spawn additional sessions with the same endpoint. It remembers everything for you. My favorite feature though is after you log in the first time, it automatically will set up public-private keys and use that for authentication going forward. And you don't have to tweak anything to get that to work. Well, no, I take that back. There's a checkbox that's checked off by default. So you have to not check off the checkbox to start using public-private keys.
There we go. All right. So hopefully, Chris, can you guys see my command prompts? Okay. As the size. All right. I can make them
that
bigger.
works.
Okay, there we go. All right. So I've already, you can follow the instructions. I've already gone through the steps of setting it to bridge networking. I have gone through the steps of changing my password. So right now I am on, if you're following along at home, I am on step 5, which is get your IP address. So we already have that because I already logged in, but you know, you want to know what the IP address is of your device, right? So we're using the new IPA instead of ifconfig because the people at Linux are insane. But at any rate, IP address show dev ENS33. That is actually the device that we're going to be setting up Zeek on. And we're also going to be setting it up so AC Hunter, we can access it there as well. So we have it ready to rock and roll. So now I'm logged in, I've become root, and now I have to download some files. And we have a master. What is Bill's official title, by the way?
Master of Shitty Little Shell Scripts.
Yeah, Master of Shitty Little Shell Scripts. So what we're going to do is we're going to download some shitty little shell scripts. Actually, no, I'm actually downloading Zeek first, but we're going to get to the little shitty shell scripts here in just a couple of seconds. So let's go ahead and get Zeek installed on the system. Doesn't take that long at all. I actually think that's on Bill's business cards, actually.
What,
we're going to
Zeek?
make this. No, the director of Shitty Little Shell Scripts.
Yes, it is.
So, all right. So just following the instructions that are out on GitHub, if somebody can reshare that with the people that are in Discord, I would appreciate it. And we're just going to use the Zeek Docker container on it as well. As I'm sitting here wondering, like, I'm kind of thinking, Chris, that I screwed up at this point. Like, like I think this is the AC Hunter system that I have running right now, by the way. I got to check something
Okay.
real quick. Yeah, I totally screwed this up.
Yeah, you can't put Zeek in the Zeek's already in a container on that system. So
Yes, it is. It is. So never mind the man. Hey, Chris, why don't you talk a little bit about some of the limitations of Zeek while I do the man behind the curtain and get back to this exact same spot on a new VM? Why would you want to run Zeek at home, and why would you? What are some problems that we've ran into working with Zeek over the past couple of years? So I'm going to stop sharing while Chris tells us a story and I unscrew up my little mess that I made. So take us away, Chris.
so one of the things first is VMware. One of the things you can run into running in bridge mode is that you'll start up and it can't seem to get an IP address. Usually that's because your host system, like mine, has like 8 different network interfaces, and VMware gets really confused about which one it should actually be using. So if you are following along with John's steps and you get to where, okay, you bring the VM up in bridge mode and it can't actually get an IP address, you got to go back and there's a special tool that comes with Windows, VMware Workstation. I forget the name of it off the top of my head. It's like Network Editor or something like that. Go into that tool, deselect all the network interfaces that you don't actually want to use, and then restart your VM, and then everything there should be fine. As far as the limitations go on the Zeek side, there's a couple of interesting ones that we've run into. One is that one revolves around long connections. So again, what we're kind of focusing on is being able to identify virtual network editor. Awesome. Thank you, Johnny. One of the things we're focused on is identifying command and control channels. So that is an internal compromised system calling out to some host out on the internet, and there's some kind of persistency there. And persistency could be it's just holding the connection open all the time. It's going off at some regular interval, every 10 minutes plus or minus a minute type of thing. There's some sort of persistency to that connection. And Zeek does have a couple of limitations around that you really need to go in and tweak. One is based around the fact that Zeek doesn't write out its log entries until the connection closes. Well, if you think about that from a log connection standpoint, right? I compromise one of your internal systems. I have that compromised system call out to a C2 server, and I have that continue to run. Zeek will actually not record anything in its logs to let you know that connection's taking place. That can be a problem. So one of the things we created was a module for Zeek, and it's up on GitHub as well, that allows you to basically go in and create a copy of the snapshot, or a snapshot of the of memory every hour, and what the state table looks like within Zeek. So the concept is, after an hour, Zeek will go write out its log files. This module will then take a snapshot of what the state table looks like. It'll compare it to the entries in the log, and anything missing, it will create a new con-open.log file, and it will write that information there. So what's nice about that is, let's say, again, I create that C2 in your environment, I'm there for 90 days, and then I shut it down. You'd get a log entry after 90 days saying this connection was running for 90 days. With this module we're talking about, every hour you'll see that connection's been running for an hour longer. That gives you plenty of time to go in and respond. The other issue we've run into is with the TCP timeout. Zeek forgets about TCP sessions if they go quiet for more than 5 minutes. And this can kind of hit you in that whole long connection thing as well. So again, imagine I've got a connection running, but data only runs down at like every 20 minutes or so. Well, after 5 minutes, Zeek forgets about that. And now when it starts sending data again, Zeek says, oh, hey, this connection on TCP 443, I didn't see a handshake. I don't know what this is. When in fact, it's actually related to the earlier session, and it just forgets all that state information. So yeah, that's a fairly easy fix, and that's something that gets tweaked as well.
Cool.
So how you doing, John?
We're doing great now.
Awesome.
So we are now ready to install Zeek. And like we were talking about, it's really, really, really funny. We don't see like a lot of home devices installing and running Zeek all that often, yeah. Which is a bit frustrating in an environment as well. So, no, it's still going to give me problems. I went through and I did this multiple times.
Ah, see, that's why you were prepared.
There we go. It just updated its DNS. So now we're good. All right. So I just installed it. I just downloaded Zeek. Now we're going to make the Zeek directory executable. So we can actually run Zeek. Go. And then we're going to pull it down. Go. Should take a couple of seconds. Go. And Docker is one of those things I'd like to say it's like amazing how easy it makes things and how complicated it makes things. Especially on a networking with all the different containers and everything on all the different adapters, it can make it somewhat difficult. And the way that we're running this particular virtual machine is we're going to run Zeek, and the interface that we're going to be running Zeek on is the main Ethernet interface, which is ENS on my system 33. So I'm going to hit spacebar on that. Hit enter. And now we've got Zeek running and set it up. I'm going to run Zeek start just to make sure that it's running and make sure we're good. It's already running. So that's great. So the next step that we need to do is we need to make it so we can log into the AC Hunter instance, that we can actually log in, and we've got to create a user and a password for AC Hunter because we want to be able to log into that device. And we have a wonderful little script that does that called manage web user. .sh. We're going to reset the password for welcome@activecountermeasures.com. Setting the password to password because I don't believe in really good security when you're running a webcast or training. So that is now done. And now what we need to do is actually get the Zeek sensor up and running on this system. So go ahead and copy the command from GitHub. Go. And this is, I believe, something that was created by Bill and Logan. We have a number of these scripts set up. That. There we go. All right. So we're running it a little bit different than the main instructions. So in the main instructions, you would set up AC Hunter on one system, and then you would set up Zeek on another system. But for home use, we don't need to do that. For home use, we can set them up on the exact same system because it's a flat network, usually just a very, very basic network device. We're going to ARP cache poison it. As far as like how much data and like how much CPU is required, actually for Rita AC Hunter, it's very little. Chris, we've actually had this running on like gigabit links off of a Raspberry Pi, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I included a link for folks to a version of BetterCap that actually runs on the Raspberry Pi.
Yeah. And you know what? It shouldn't be that hard to get something working. But what happens is a lot of those scripts, they try to look at what their build environment is. And if it doesn't match the specific like uname -a string that it's looking for, it just gives up. Mongo on Windows Subsystem for Linux is a great example of that.
Absolutely.
So there are some really cool versions out there that work on a Pi, and thank you for that. You got that out on the Discord for people?
Yes, I did.
Awesome.
Oh, and I will say to folks, there's a Docker version of BetterCap. It does not work.
And I will be using the Docker version of BetterCap for this because
just not on a Raspberry Pi.
Not on a Raspberry Pi. Just clarify. I'm running this inside of a VM. The next thing I did is I got the host name. And the reason why I wanted to get the host name is in step 11 in my GitHub instructions, we're going to run this script. And what this script does, if you really want to learn some cool bash stuff, you've got to look at these bash scripts. Bill is doing black magic with these scripts, like the way he's doing SSH keys and tying these two things together, setting up cron jobs to go on a regular interval. Like you could write an entire class on what Bill has done for these bash scripts, but it's really easy for you to run. You simply run the connect sensor.sh script. You give it the host name of that script, and then it's going to ask you a question. It's going to try to log in via SSH. And it's like, are you sure? Is this in fact the system that you want me to log into? So I'm going to type yes, because the key fingerprint checks out. I verified them before the webcast. So I'm going to type yes, type in the password. WORD. There we go. And now it's automatically going through identifying where the Zeek log directories are. And it's automatically setting up a job, and it's uploading the transport script, setting up a job to run the transport script every single hour to roll those Zeek logs off and get them into AC Hunter so that you can start doing that network traffic analysis on this specific network.
And just so you know, John, the bottom of your screen's getting clipped a little bit. If you could just
I
move
just
it
popped
up.
up there.
Okay,
You
cool.
should see it now. I know I got to get better at my control L's. So, so now we have AC Hunter installed, which super easy. You just literally had to create a user. We installed Zeek with like 4 commands and it's all running and it's automatically syncing and tying those Zeek logs up to AC Hunter. And it took us like 15 minutes, including me making a mistake on which VM I was working in because I have too many freaking Ubuntu VMs right now. That's kind of it to get AC Hunter up and running and tied to Zeek.
Yeah.
But we're adding in an extra bit of awesome. What we're going to do now is run Bettercap. And we're going to install Bettercap. I'm going to switch over from my standard data import account to another terminal that I'm logged into that same system as root. I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. The first reason is we're pulling down a Docker container for Bettercap, and it's going to be running and it's going to be making network interface changes. The other reason is Bettercap is doing ARP spoofing, and that works at a level that you need to have root privileges to be able to do that type of direct packet creation and manipulation on the network. So let's go through and let's set up Bettercap. Super easy commands to run. These are straight off the Bettercap website. There we go. I think, Chris, I have a problem. Like anytime I use Bettercap, I think I try to make it harder than it should be because I'm used to the old Ettercap days. You remember with Ettercap?
Oh, yes.
It was out of Italy, right?
Yeah.
Like it became the people, I think it was security team. They actually got hacked a number of years ago. Our man Serge, and Ettercap was cool if you ran it at the command line, but they had this GUI that made things way more complicated than they needed to.
Yes.
And
Oh, yeah. The curses interface. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Bettercap for me is the same thing. I'm not using the web user interface. It just, I have problems with it all the time.
But as long as you remember your set commands, it's not too bad.
Yeah, I guess it's not that bad.
We need to have Bill create a script around it.
We do, and it would just make things easier.
Right? It would. Yeah.
So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run Docker. We're going to execute commands inside the Bettercap Docker, and what we're going to do is we're going to update the caplets. Rather than calling them config files or things like that, they call them caplets for whatever freaking reason.
Why not?
Yeah. Why not? We need to make things more complicated. So we're going to update all the caplets in Bettercap. And it's going to go to GitHub. It's going to pull down the most recent versions, download them. We're good to go. I am running a command where I'm going to install mlocate. This VM, even though it is 7 gigs, it has a stripped down version of Ubuntu. And honestly, there's certain utilities that you just get really used to, like just basic locate, right? So I'm going to do update DB, and I'm going to show you why I'm doing this. See, I'm looking for a very specific caplet or a config file within Bettercap. I'm looking for the caplet that allows us to configure the HTTPS interface for logging in. I'm not using it. Don't get me wrong. But I can't have 2 HTTPS interfaces on the same system. I want AC Hunter to be the HTTPS main web server for accessing AC Hunter. And I'm going to move the default port of Bettercap off of port 443 and move it onto port 4443. And this gets a little bit weird, so just stick with me. I'm going to see if I can get this Bettercap bug to show up here in just a second, which is kind of a cool bug. So set HTTPS server, just going to throw in another 4. And yes, I gave instructions on how to use VI in the instructions as well. So we've got it edited. And then we're going to run Bettercap. Now, I run into problems with this, like probably 50% of the time, that Bettercap pukes. And I want to show you like a bug. And I talk about this in the instructions as well. So if I run it, let's see if I get an HTTPS error about the port. Nope, it worked this time. All right. So about 50% of the time, when you edit that caplet file, for some crazy reason, when Bettercap runs, it changes your port from 4443 to 44444443. So if you get that error, you just go back up, re-edit the file, everything's fine. You just have to go in and edit it and run it twice. And I give those instructions. I give those instructions on how to do that inside of the GitHub page on where we do this. Now, once we're in BetterCap, we have a series of options that we can actually work with. And some of these options are like super duper important. So the first one I'm going to do, just type help, right? I don't know what's going on. Let's just write help. And this will give you all of the different types of modules that you can run. And if you want help running a module, you can just do run or just help and then the name of the module. And you can see all of it. The other ones that you can do is you can run like, let's do net.show, and it'll show me the current network. And it says, okay, well, we've got this one system that's running VMware. We've got a Netgear as the gateway. I am not ARP cache poisoning anything at this point. It's just simply sitting here and it's not actively trying to identify anything on the network at all. So if I run help, there's a couple of different things that are really, really, really super important, right? One of the things that's super important is whenever you turn on ARP cache poisoning, and this is a little bit of a frustration for me in the way that it's working, it doesn't automatically start an HTTP or an HTTPS proxy. And the reason why that bothers me is because when you run BetterCap and you do ARP cache poisoning, if there is not an HTTP or HTTPS proxy, it appears as though the entire internet is broken for any of the systems that you are running. It just seizes. So it's ARP cache poisoning, but it's not actually proxying the traffic through. So in order to turn these various things on, you would have to run like TCP proxy, right? You'd have to run that one. And that's just basically running TCP proxy on. We'll turn it on. Or HTTPS proxy is the big one that I use more than anything else. So we just do HTTPS proxy on. And now that proxy is running, but I am not actually going through and running any traffic through it. All right. So to run that, you have to run this command. All right. So if we go help, we have to turn on arp.spoof. I'm not going to do arp.spoof. The reason I'm not going to run arp.spoof is as soon as I start ARP cache poisoning this particular network that I am on with you doing this webcast, Zoom tends to die. In the instructions, I give you the last two commands that you need to actually run it. It's just ARP spoof on, then you turn on the HTTPS proxy at that point. And then you're able to see data being loaded in your AC Hunter instance. Now, as much as I would love to show you like me absolutely cutting myself off at the knees, I am not going to do that. I am not going to do that. The other thing is, even if I did do that, if I went into AC Hunter, there would be no data. Why would there be no data? Let's see if people can get that, Chris. Let me know. I'm doing some VMware shenanigans in the background.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah, let's see if anybody can get it on the Discords. Like, why would there be no data in my AC Hunter instance?
Till you close comms. Not quite.
Not there yet.
Because it borked. Nope.
Well,
hey, so funny Bill story while we're waiting. We were talking about
Okay.
master of shitty shell scripts. Bill did a virtual meetup on Discord last week for SSH. And I made the comment that, hey, I once watched Bill create an SSH session with an open SSH server using Netcat. And Bill's response was, well, yeah, but I had a TI-55 calculator to help.
Like I said, I get to the point where it's just like seriously, like, why am I even in IT? Because Bill's in IT.
Yeah, really. So it looks like Robin's got it. It takes an hour to get the takes an hour to get the logs.
It does take an hour to get the logs. All right.
Yeah, it
However,
doesn't take 24 hours. After the first hour, it'll get
first hour
something. And if it sees the C2, kind of depends upon how quick the C2 is. If it's going off like once a minute, oh yeah, it'll spot it. If it's only going off every 20 minutes, yeah, we may need more than an hour's of data to point that out to you.
So here's the mistake I made, Chris. I have 2 AC Hunter instances that I've installed as virtual machines on this computer. I have one that I set up and I ran yesterday that has data in it, and that's this one. And I have one that's brand new from scratch. And when we started the webcast, I actually had the one that I had running from yesterday was still the one, the virtual machine that was active. So I had to do like a 2-card Monte by shutting off the one from yesterday, turning on the new one, and I just switched them back. So I'm going to do the Julia Childs thing where it's like, oh, look, the cake is done. So this VM is an AC Hunter instance that was running with BetterCap. And sure enough, we have beaconing data. Sure enough, I don't know if we got any proxy. We do have some proxy data, some beacons by fully qualified domain name. I don't think we have any strobes, no long connections whatsoever, no data and threat intel yet, no DNS data. We are getting some some data here. You can see that we have this one that popped up and said, honest, I'm not evil. Actually, this isn't my data. This is one of the pre-canned data sets. Here we go. That's proxy data. So this is my rolling data set.
Yeah, and the DNS, sometimes if you change the filter from 100 to 0, things will show up in there too.
Yep, absolutely. So this is what it looks like on the little network that I stood up that you're looking at, but me running it for a period of time. This was me running it for, I think, 5 hours right here. You can see that we're starting to see some beaconing data that's starting to roll through. So this is really, really super cool because this means that this level of visibility, this level of analysis where you can do like deep dive analysis and you can see who else has been going to this IP address, how much data has been going to this IP address, all of the stuff that Chris and I talk about all the time in AC Hunter and what you can do in an enterprise level threat hunt, you can now do against your own children. And that is very powerful. So how do I use this? So right now, what you're seeing, you aren't seeing my home AC Hunter instance. You're seeing me plug into like this really cheap Linksys router that's plugged into my network, and it's all it's just localized to this specific router. The 192.168.3.132, 116, and 122. 122 is my AC Hunter system. I think 116 is my actual host system that I'm running on. And then I used this router a while ago, and one of my Chromecasts that's closer to it saw this network come up, and it's like, I remember this network, and that signal's stronger. And it just joined this network, which was really, really cool. So we had one of these as a Chromecast. I can't remember which, but the ARP cache poisoning brought all the traffic to AC Hunter. Now, I don't know how many of you actually have teenagers. Let's commiserate about teenagers right now, right? And by the way, Extreme Paperclip, watching the BHIS video to pause and take notes. Remember, we also have the full labs with step-by-step of all the stuff that I did is here as well. So you can go through it on your own, and then you can go through the video too. So I've got a teenager. He's 16 going on 17. And he knows that dad is watching the network, right? He knows that if dad is like watching the network, going to certain sites or trying to play video games doesn't work. So if you are an enterprising young lad or ladette, and you know that your parents are watching absolutely everything on that network, what do the kids all know and they all try to do, right? What is the first thing that they're all going to VPN, right? And there are so many VPN software packages out there that it's very hard to try to block every single one of them. Exploit brought up a great point, 5G, Chris, just tethering. Luckily, I live out in the middle of freaking nowhere, and cell networks are very, very limited here. So with AC Hunter, what I can see is who are my top talkers? Because a VPN, I don't know if we have, let me go back to some of the pre-canned data sets, Chris, and maybe you can walk through some of these data sets, which I think is really, we have some really cool ones. But a VPN data set, whenever your kid is playing games, looks a lot like this. It looks very, very flat, setting up a continuous stream of data. It looks like a standard beacon. And as I said, a lot of home firewalls, they aren't blocking all of the IP addresses for these VPN services because they rotate them very, very, very quickly, which is a whole nother conversation. But AC Hunter picks it up as a beacon with a large amount of data transfer. So I love it whenever he tries to like lie to me. It's like, I wasn't using a VPN at all. I'm like, so your phone just magically went through 4 gigs of data last night. No, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, you can now get that visibility. Home networks, anytime people come and visit, if they're on my guest networks, if they're compromised, as Chris said, you know, like a lot of malware specimens light up like a Christmas tree in AC Hunter. There's absolute ways to get around AC Hunter. I want to make that very clear. Chris and I teach them like in our classes, but 99% of the attackers that are out there don't even bother to try to do any frequency distribution in their beaconing.
It's hard to create a C2 channel that still actually functions and circumvent the tool.
It is. It is. Absolutely. That's like Chris and I say, like people ask, how do you get around AC Hunter? Have your backdoor beacon once per day.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly. You get one command a day to run. That's it.
And by the way, we can't talk too much about what we have in store with AC Hunter, but in the near future, even that is going to be very difficult to get around AC Hunter as well. So this opens it up, and the capabilities of AC Hunter, it's pretty much all the core capabilities that AC Hunter has. We limit the number of sensors that can come in and the amount of data sets that you can keep as far as rolling data sets. We have to put some limitations on this because, hey, we gotta feed Chris's crows somehow. So Chris, do you want to talk about any of the data sets and some cool things to kind of like for people to get an idea of what they can do once they get this? Like, which one do you want to go to? I have my favorites, of course, is GCAT. But are there any other ones that you like to talk about?
Let's see, is Notepad in that one?
The Notepad one, I think, is WinLab Agent. That's the one that ties into the process injection that Joff did.
Got it. Yeah, that's got some interesting ones in it.
I don't think the Beaker stuff is installed on this VM.
That's okay. Just the C2 stuff itself is pretty interesting. So
yes, if you see this, this is bad. Chris, can you tell them why this is bad?
The bottom graph is really what kind of describes it. So my x-axis is time. Each bar represents a 1 hour period of time. So it's identifying how many times did that source address connect to that destination address. And my y-axis is quantity. So we're seeing about 300 connections an hour take place. And the important attribute of that is it's every hour, 24 hours a day that it's taking place. That makes this one kind of super interesting to me. That and the fact that if you take a look in the top right, it was identifying what was the DNS query that was performed that caused the user to go to this IP address. And there's no DNS lookup. There was no DNS lookup taking place.
Yeah, I want to call out, like over here, I'm kind of highlighting it a little bit. This queried fully qualified domain name and historic fully qualified domain name. This is definitely one of those things. If it's a direct IP address communication, it's weird. And that doesn't mean that AC Hunter wouldn't detect it if it was. Let me go over to my favorite here real quick, Chris, and show them what that looks like. So some of the stuff that we've been doing, we could talk about domain fronting and some of those things, but this is a tool, GCAT.
Yeah.
And if we go to the beacon, you can actually see that there is some fully qualified domain name. Is it this one? Oh, it's 11.
There you go. Yeah, you just add. There you go.
Was it the right one? Oh, this one's Microsoft.
Okay.
I've just got to find the right one. But it basically all of the command and control goes to Google Mail. Might be the wrong data set. Did I not open the right data set, Chris?
I thought you did. It should say in that top right, I've got like Zoom stuff hiding what database you have open right now. So,
okay. Beacon score on this one. This is going to adkins.net. But you can see that these fully qualified domain names are present in these. And when we set this up, you can beacon directly to an IP address. But if you're using domain fronting or you're using something like Google as your command and control, one of the problems that you run into in trying to detect that is the IP addresses will rotate. And the IP addresses can rotate through domain fronting, through load balancing, and a variety of different things. And we have Mubix and Egypt to thank for that. Because our testers, by the way, BHIS testers are always trying to come up with ways to get around AC Hunter and all of that stuff. And it's this fun cat and mouse game. And they came up with, let's give credit where credit is due, Chris. They basically set up round robin domain fronting where the IP addresses were shifting. And I think it took us less than a week to set it up where we could do beaconing based on fully qualified domain names. So we could see where it was actually going. And you can see that down here.
So a couple of quick questions in Discord. The difference between queried FQDN and historic. Queried means there was a DNS query done just prior to the user connecting to it. Historic means it was coming out of cache data. So the resolver had that information cached. There was no query that took place. The other question was Star Trek the influence for the background? The background is actually influenced by the data set. When you use this tool long enough, based on what that 3D landscape looks like in the background, you can actually, you'll probably notice that when John changes the data set, that background changes. That background is actually a graphical representation of other beacons, other long connections, what stuff has ended up on the safe list entries. So you'll actually see that change.
Yep. Let me pull in a couple, but yeah, you can see a change. It's one of those super geeky things that not a lot of people know of as well.
Yep.
But that just kind of gives you like the level of geekiness that's going on this as well. Chris, we had another question about TLS SSL. Was it SNI? For the TLS based C2s, do you do any analysis of the SNI being used on that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So for anything that is HTTP based, we're using SNI. And the reason for that is a lot of that is going through content delivery networks. So instead of going to a single IP, it might be going to multiple, and there's legitimate traffic mixed in there as well. If you're not looking at the SNI, you're never going to be able to tag that properly as a beacon.
What was that proxy company that was one of the main reasons why we started looking at the SNI? Oh, oh God, Chris.
You're talking about the one that like was talking about the ciphertext?
Yeah, it was one of the
proxies. So I won't say who they were, but it's a vendor that makes a proxy that they want you to put out on your network, have all your users connect through it. They will decrypt it. They will pattern match on it. And the conversation I had with them was, well, but attackers are double encrypting their data now, right? They're going through and they're either obfuscating or they're encrypting it, and then they're running it through a TLS tunnel. So if you pull off TLS, it's still ciphertext. And the response I got was, well, at least you're that much closer to the actual data. Like, oh yeah, because if you double encrypt something but take off one layer, now you can make out the letter A at the beginning of each sentence or something. Like, no, that's not how encryption works.
Yeah,
you're selling this box, I'm afraid.
Yeah, we don't like talking about vendors like Extra Hop very often in these things, but will AC Hunter hit on varying protocols the same fully qualified domain name? I'm thinking of sending different checks to different fully qualified domain name IP addresses. You could also diversify the protocols, Chris.
Yep. Yeah, we'll watch for that. We'll watch for that. Oh yeah.
What else do we got? Is there a way to match the connections to the process being used to make the connections hells to the app? That's Beaker. We talked about it. I don't think, Beaker is not installed on this, but for any of these different connections, if you have Beaker installed, there's a Beaker that shows up here.
Yeah, it's just to the left of the source. You'll see a little Beaker icon show up.
It's right there. And the other thing that's really, really, really cool is you can actually add in your own match. So like if you're using something like an EDR vendor where you could, like the URL is date, timestamp, IP address, source, and destination, you can add it so it integrates with your EDR as well, which is really, really, really super cool. So
although the EDR would probably be more applicable on the source side as opposed to the destination. But to John's point, if you're using like Carbon Black Response, just go ahead and add that interface to the drop down menu, bang, you're off to the races.
Yep. So really super easy for this. So keep the questions coming. Chris and I love these questions. We really, really like, this has been a labor of love for Chris and I for a number of years. And another reason why we kind of like set up a community edition is we fundamentally believe that people do not understand what network threat hunting is. And they look at it through like a number of different things. They're like, well, it's writing signatures for an inspection system.
Yeah. Damn it. The stuff I learned 10 years ago, I want that to still be valid. So I'm going to pretend that's what it's all about.
Once again, 2003, a young John Strand is in a Chris Breton class saying, this ARP cache poisoning shit, like they haven't fixed this? No. They're going to fix it though. I'm sure eventually. And here we are 20 years later.
Yep. So Fluffy says, safe to say Beaker or properly tuned sysmon install. Yeah, ID3s are what's going to save you. I know like forensics people and vendors that charge you for storage tell you you need to collect everything off of every endpoint. But at the end of the day, if what you're trying to do is just identify, is this box whacked, yes or no? What's the bare minimum you need to collect? It's ID3s. ID3s are applications running on a Windows system that are communicating on the network, either inbound or outbound. If you have that, you can figure out if it's compromised. And if you really care, you're going to do a full forensic analysis on the box anyway. So the rest of the data really kind of becomes superfluous at that point.
So we just had somebody that asked, what about DNS backdoors, Chris? Oh, look, I just happen to have a DNS backdoor up here. If you go to DNS, Chris, do you want to talk about this one? And I can click on what you want me to click on.
Sure thing. So there's kind of two things we look at. One is, how many resources does it make sense for a domain to expose on the internet through DNS? Right. So if you think about like your typical mom and pop shop, they're probably going to have like 10 or less DNS records. They'll have a web server, mail server, customer portal. There's not much. There are domains that all of us know, like Microsoft, like Akamai, like Amazon, that might actually have a couple hundred. So one of the first things we go looking for is how many resource records were queried in that remote domain. In the example that John has up, you can see 62,468 unique resource records were queried for R-1. That's a lot. That makes no sense at all. Yes.
Yeah. The only time we have ever seen that, I think it was somebody that was going to Kimry. They were using Kimry and they were doing hash.something.kimry.eu or whatever. And that's the only time that we've ever seen anything like that.
Where it's legit. Yeah, the rest of the time, it's definitely C2. The other thing we look at before you go off of this, John, if you click on the akadns.net line, so there we found one more down, although that one works too. So we found 125 resources within akadns.net. And then, John, if you click where it says direct connections.
Right over here. Boom.
Yeah. So what we're looking at is we're looking at utilization. So we're saying that for akadns.net, 125 unique resources were queried, and this caused 13 of our internal systems to connect to one or more resources within that akadns.net domain. And if you think about it, this is how DNS is supposed to work, right? User types a name in their browser, that gets resolved to an IP, that user connects to that IP. If you can go back to r-1x.com for a moment, please. Yep. Just click to the right of the name. You'll notice that there's only one direct connection taking place to that domain, and that's the DNS server. So in other words, we looked up 62,000 plus resource records, but none of our users needed to access any of those resources. That makes no sense at all. So that's one of the other things we go looking for to identify C2 over DNS.
Yep. So once again, everybody, we got to kind of wrap it up. This is available for all of you to run for free at home. And we literally just gave you the instructions to set it up and get it running at home super easily. We got the GitHub page where you can get it running. And once again, our main goal in trying to do this is to get network threat hunting out of the realm of just like, was it a bad IP address or host name? We get very frustrated, and I'm going to be a little bit more blunt. I think we get very, very frustrated at two things, right? Actually, a number of things, but I'm going to talk about two. We get really, really frustrated whenever you have very, very expensive network threat hunting tools that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and demos take weeks, if not months, to actually get set up. And then they don't actually do what they say that they can do. That sucks, right?
Yep.
The other thing that frustrates us is we see relatively expensive network threat hunting solutions that are literally nothing but very large deny lists of domains and IP addresses. And that's it.
Some of them dating back years.
Yes. What was the one that you were just talking about? We had one. We had which vendor was it that was going through our data sets that we use as sample data
Virus
sets?
total.
Virus Total. Virus Total was taking our data sets that we use as sample data sets that we set up C2 servers in the cloud for just a short period of time. And they were actually like, we had one data set that was 3 years old. And just recently they flagged the IP address as a malicious IP address.
Yeah.
Fun fact, we don't own that IP address anymore. So
Yeah.
somebody's website out there is completely getting done. Like,
why does everybody hate me? I don't understand.
it's so weird, right?
Yep.
So we're trying to take that idea of network threat hunting beyond that. And also from a commercial perspective, getting into advertising, folks, like we're putting this in the hands of anybody that wants to give it a shot and
Yep.
play with it. Like, it's not like, well, you gotta set us up and well, we got to get in your environment. We got to upgrade your switches and it's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars as a down payment. And no,
Yeah.
no.
Here's a free tool. And if you're not sure you're going to do well with the free tool, October 3rd, we have 6 hours of free training.
There you go. Yeah. So, and Chris, your class has been updated to really be focused on this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We still go through the basics. We still go through, what is command and control? Why does signature base not work? Why does AI not work? I still get a kick out of folks so we had a very large company that I will remain nameless that looked at us 2 years ago and said, hey, we like the tool, but we're pushing 100 gigabit and you're just not keeping up. So we mutually decided, yeah, you're right. We're not a good fit.
We're like 100 gig is a lot.
Yeah, that was 2 years ago. They just came back and said, okay, you couldn't keep up, but you still did better than every other vendor we looked at. So we wanted to open a conversation with you again. And we want to buy your product because at least when you we do get the traffic to you, you actually detect things. So,
and the moral of the story is, I think we can handle that now. I think we can handle 100 gigs now, Chris, if I'm not mistaken. Like we've done some.
Oh, we're real close. So I'd say the current version will probably scale into like I wouldn't want to go over like 50 gig just yet. But the new version we're working on, 100 gig will not be a problem.
Yeah, the new version that's going to be coming out, we've been doing some comparisons, and it will be able to handle 100 gigs.
Yeah. I've got 100 gig network, and I'm worried about nation state that might try and go really low and slow, like every 4 hours. Oh yeah, we'll detect that. Not yet, but it's coming.
It's phantomware at the moment, but
yes,
the fleet of crows and folks they're working on it right now.
Yeah.
And just the data analytics, we know it's possible. We know we're doing this. It's basically UI front end for it right now. And I don't know how much faster it is. I want to say it's like 10 times faster.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And then some. Yeah.
So there's some really cool stuff.
And it'll track data over a longer period of time. So today you're kind of stuck with, it's a 24-hour window we look at. You'll be able to go in and say, yeah, I want to look over 3 days instead of a day. I'm worried about like I said, high level nation state, only beaconing like every 4 hours. Yeah, you'll be able to incorporate that in. Might, depending upon how much data you get, it might take, a couple seconds for the interface to come back. But oh yeah, we got some fun stuff coming.
So I want to basically say that that's officially the end of the webcast. We're now in post-show banter. Which means Chris and I are just going to sit here and keep answering your questions until you're sick of us. And the only thing that's happening is memes like that as well. What about devices where you can't reach it, like Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud Compute? Chris, a lot of those environments now have the ability to do like packet captures, and we can do analysis on them.
Well,
but there are some things that are a bit different if you want to talk about some of those.
Yeah. So Amazon, you can basically do their equivalent of like a GRE tunnel and deal with it that way. So the way we work in Amazon is second interface, and you just tunnel the traffic through that, and that leads to a system running the Zeek sensor, and it's not that different than how it normally runs. When you get into like Google Cloud or you get into Azure, it's the SB component that we really leverage for going through and being able to watch those systems. Amazon just doesn't want you to be able to see the network traffic. They do have some network monitoring capability, it shuts off after a specified period of time and a specified amount of data.
You mean
That
Azure?
in Azure,
Yeah,
yes.
not Amazon. Azure does that.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, just clarifying.
No. Thank you for catching that. Yeah, no, it's definitely Azure. Amazon, we don't have that problem. Azure, what we kind of ran into is we said, oh, they're killing the packet capture every hour. We'll just set up a background process to turn it back on again. And then we found out that, oh, they're also shutting it off after you capture a gig of data. Well, if you've got a quasi busy server in Azure, you're going to run up to a gig pretty quickly. So,
So somebody just said, hey, I'm trying to get the VM running. It doesn't look like it started, but I don't see the log on screen. Just hit enter 3 times because there's kernel messages that continue to come to the terminal that can kind of overwrite the login screens. Just hit enter 3 times. Should be good on that. So how much data can AC Hunter handle? Thinking of massive span taps. Does it scale horizontally across distributed for the enterprise edition? The way it sells is whenever you buy a license for AC Hunter, it comes with consulting, of course, but it also is, we're not like setting the pricing based on number of sites. We're not setting pricing based on data. So you can literally set it up so you have multiple Zeek sensors all feeding data up to AC Hunter instances.
And multiple AC Hunter instances if you want to do that.
AC Hunter instances. And like we said, about 50 gigs is where we feel comfortable. Of course, that requires specialized network cards, that requires specialized hardware. But no, it can handle about 50 gigs pretty comfortably.
It's kind of sad that it takes a long conversation to explain to people that once you pay that price, you use it as many times, protecting as many systems as you want, and there's no upcharge.
Yeah, they don't understand. They're like, so what if?
Yeah, well, there must be an
sites.
upcharge for this. What if I want to store the data longer? No, there's no upcharge for that. Oh, but I have a field office. I want to run a separate instance. There's no upcharge for that. Oh, cloud. There must be. No. There's no upcharge for that. So the only limitations are don't give it away free to your friends. And if you want to use it to protect third parties, we want to put you through a training program to make sure you're using it correctly.
So Not Charles said, resurfing because it got lost in the noise. If you turn on an HTTPS proxy, a la Burp or Zed, did you do anything with a proxy? You don't need to push the key to your end user devices. Yes, you would. So Burp has the ability to actually push the certificate out. You can download it as a PEM file, and then you can import it, and then your device will trust that particular proxy. That is very different than BetterCap. BetterCap is merely proxying the HTTPS traffic, and it's just doing standard port forwarding at that point. So it's not doing full interception. But it can actually with SSL strip.
Yeah, although we don't need to see the payload to identify C2. There's no signatures here. It's all behavioral analytics. So as long as we see the timing, so long as we see the amount of data getting pushed, encrypted or not, triple encrypted, we don't care. We'll be able to go through and do detection based on that.
Can we feed DNS logs from info blocks into Rita and AC Hunter? You can. It's a pain in the ass currently. But our DNS logs are basically the logs that are created by Zeek. So we had to pick one of them. So we went with that. PD Wheeler asked a question. That is a good one. I noticed that with AC Hunter, it appears that when a domain or IP address is filtered, the results on the dashboard don't reflect that most of the beacons are actually filtered. Is this correct? i.e. dash reports 100% beacon score, but the Jill Drown score shows the highest beacon is between the 80 to 90 range. Is that correct? I think one of the things I'm going to give a shot at this one, Chris. Whenever we're looking at the overall score is a composite of multiple things. Beaconing is one of those things. So if you have beaconing and you whitelist it for beaconing, but it's also showing up on DNS or showing up someplace else, that aggregate score is still going to exist on the home page.
Yep. Yeah. And it's not uncommon if you have like a fast beacon that it ends up showing it under cumulative time. There's a long connection as well. So yeah, it can end up potentially pulling in score points from multiple attributes.
Have you seen any certain layer 3 networking devices that have stopped AC Hunter from doing the dirty, either by catching or blocking the ARP spoof? Now, remember, AC Hunter in and of itself does not do ARP cache poisoning. For this webcast, all I did was get an AC Hunter instance and then install BetterCap to do ARP cache poisoning at that point. Okay, that being said, If that actually happens, much like you have to do with the firewall, you have to actually go in and configure DHCP to set up your AC Hunter instance as your gateway and then enable IP forwarding. It's like proc net IP forward, set that to 1. And then it'll forward the traffic like a router in that situation. So it's not really a race condition at that point. Would you be able to use port mirroring instead of ARP cache poisoning? Absolutely. So if you're at work and you got a managed switch, you don't need to do better cap. You don't need to do any of it. You just simply plug that right into that span port, one interface into the span port, another interface for management, and you're off to the races.
Yeah, somebody kind of mentioned a DNS log format, and will it accept this? Da da da.
Yeah.
There's a if you do the binary install, if you download the install script and run that, one of the things you can install is a tool called ActiveFlow. And if you kind of take a look at the template that's being used for that, ActiveFlow is kind of designed to be to take other formats, so things like NetFlow, and convert that into what looks like Zeek logs as much as possible, or at least as much as being supplied. So you may be able to take something like like that ActiveFlow tool and modify it and use that. But if you're only looking at DNS data without the connection information, I can guarantee you're going to miss stuff.
Yep. Also, some people were talking about what devices can they get at home that are managed devices that are affordable. This is a MikroTik hex. And you have your Ethernet port here, and then you can assign one of these ports to be a span or a tap port. Not only that, you can actually, not on this one, but on, oh yeah, you can right on this. You can actually plug in a USB external hard drive, and then you can do full packet capture on this as well.
Yeah, I've got a Netgear that I bought off of Amazon. It's 8 ports. It was $40. It's actually a managed switch. Yeah, it does have a span port.
Come on. I mean, that's dirt cheap, right? I like kind of what we did with BetterCap because we can actually do it on wireless, on MikroTiks and on some of the Netgears. Whenever you do a span port, it does the wireless and the Ethernet as well. On MikroTiks, though, it looks at them as 2 separate switches. Anything that's straight Ethernet would be considered a switch. Like I think it's just like 0. And then the wireless network is considered its own switch. So you would have to have 2 separate span ports on MikroTiks to do that. But this is easy to do. Like I'm going to show you guys the cheap router that I did this on. Let me grab it. Oh no, wait, can't. Because that's what I'm running through right now. I just about unplugged myself. But it's just one of those cheap black Netgear like routers. And when you do ARP cache poisoning with it, it does the wireless and the Ethernet traffic all through to you.
Dude, one way or another, we're going to get you to like DOS your own Zoom session.
It's happened so many times. No, I knew something was going to go bad because, it's like John's back from vacation for presenting and teaching for the past 3 months. So yeah, today my VM mistake is just such a rookie mistake. Like I've got the wrong VM running. It's like, oh, I can't believe I made that mistake. But having you on help because I'm like, dance, Chris.
Yes.
Just like,
dance,
hello,
monkey
my
dance.
darling.
I'm more than happy to. Yes.
It works into as well. James B. John is going to plug a Cat 6 into a loop. So years ago at a SANS conference, we had some people that were sabotaging one of the Capture the Flag events, and they were taking Ethernet cables and they were plugging both ends into the same switch. And it actually smoked out one of the managed switches at the front of the room. Like it burnt the entire thing like out. So what I'm saying is boys and girls, don't do that. Even on modern, really expensive switches, they don't like that. And I would say you're probably looking at about a 25% chance of recovery, even on devices that are thousands of dollars. Just don't do that. It's really bad. Okay. Quick DOS. I like that picture from IT Crowd.
Yeah.
Token room's not that bad. All right. I think the questions are slowing down. We're getting into memes now. We have Crossroads and we got some Steve Vai there as well. So I want to say once again,
I have a dev meeting to go talk about the new version of AC Hunter. So I got to go split for that.
We have some cool stuff coming up, folks. So get this at home, play with it. And, always let us know. We've got places where you all can submit feedback at AC Hunter and let us know what we can do better.
Absolutely.
When is the new AC Hunter version? I'm going to say 6 to 9 months. And it's probably going to be faster than that. Maybe it's slower than that. I don't know. I'm just pulling a number out of the air because,
but it's going to be faster than that. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's, we'll do our best to get it out there, and that will be a huge event for us because we're really excited about the historical things that we're going to be able to do with it as well. So, all right, let's kill it with fire. Thank you so much for coming, Chris. It was awesome. Thank you all for coming, and we will see you at the next next conference. Somebody said, am I still teaching for SANS
at the next
504?
time we try and get John to DOS himself? Yes.
So Red Dog 404, do I offer a class similar to SANS 504? Check out my Pay What You Can training. Jump in. It's September 18th. Go to Antisyphon, Pay What You Can, or me as a profile instructor. You'll see my classes. Chris Brenton is an instructor there as well. He's got a ton of classes. Check him out. Take our classes. It's fun. We think it is anyway. Talk to you all later.
Later, folks.